Hi, I'm Gary White for Central Kentucky Television. I'm here with Anthony Orr, who is the superintendent for the Nelson County School System, for our Ask the Superintendent segment. And as we're recording this, it's another snow day for the students here in Nelson County. How many has this been so far?
I've lost track of how many we've had to take, but I do know that as it stands now, if we don't have to take any more days off, we will have to go to school on Monday, June the 2nd. So we are already pushed into June just a little bit. Hope it doesn't get any worse, but it has that potential.
Yeah, wait and see. Right. As we're recording this, it's also the projection is for a potential ice situation this evening, so we'll have to wait and see what happens there. But how are the students handling all this icy weather?
I suppose they're handling it pretty well. I would say it's the mothers and the fathers that are home with their kids that I'm probably a little more concerned with. I know folks get anxious and get ready for kids to get back in school. We're anxious for kids to get back in school just because we know this time of starting and stopping, it's hard for classrooms to get the kind of momentum around instruction that we would really like to see. Of course,
and testing's coming up, right?
That's true. The last couple of years, the situation has been a little bit different from the way it was in years past, because now, since Senate Bill 1 was in 2009, the testing window for the overall accountability system slides with the end of the school year. We used to have to set it in April, and it stayed there no matter when you were in school. But now we test the last 2 weeks of school, whenever those last 2 weeks might be. So that is one benefit of the new testing system, is that it slides with us. So we don't worry about that so much. It's just obviously this would otherwise be a really productive time of the year leading up to that testing. And I think any of us feels like, whether we're in school or at work, if we have to start and stop and start and stop, it keeps the work from being as high quality as we would like it to be.
Yeah, the momentum's not there.
Absolutely.
So as of right now, we're looking at going into June. We'll have to wait and see how much further, if we do need to go into June there for it. How about any issues with the buildings and such with the weather?
We've been real fortunate. A couple of things that make it possible. Our buildings are in really good shape because the community has invested in keeping our buildings up to date, and our buildings are really well insulated. We've got a couple of Energy Star buildings, and so that speaks to that insulation piece. We've not had any trouble with water pipes bursting or anything like that. We did have a couple. We had one day when we came back to school after being out for some bad weather, where power went off in Bloomfield for the power was off for about an hour. Once we got it to come back on, we had to kind of start and stop with the power because it wasn't completely on, and so we were a little on the cool side for a couple of hours, a few hours that day, but it stayed tolerable. It stayed up in the mid-60s. Even on those days. So that's really been the only situation that we've had with the buildings. Actually, we did some work at Old Kentucky Home last year to beef up the insulation in that building. It's really made a difference. We were talking the other day, if we had not done that work back in I think it was early spring last year, we very well could have had some frozen water pipes this year, but we managed to get ahead of that.
Good. Very good. So I know some other districts in the area have had some issues with water pipes and such. So.
Yeah, absolutely. So far, all of our main issues have just really been about road conditions, so
trying to get the kids there.
Trying to get the kids there, absolutely.
Now, another issue I want to talk about is your kindergarten readiness.
Right, we got data released last week from the state level about the kindergarten readiness, and what we're really talking about here is when students show up to start kindergarten with us, are they prepared for kindergarten? And so we have a few things that are looked at there, and it's really not hardcore academics necessarily, but we get to ask students about colors and shapes and some basic things like that. And so the data came back. The state had students entering kindergarten statewide with about 50% of them showing ready for kindergarten. So we compare in Nelson County, we look at our students, and we're really talking about students who started this year in kindergarten. We look at our students, and in Nelson County, our students were ahead of that significantly. Our students, in total, about 65% of our students coming into kindergarten were ready. So we're ahead of the state on that point. We're glad to see that. The research has been really clear that very early education makes a tremendous difference over the course of the student's life. And so that fact that they come to us more ready at the kindergarten level means that we have less distance to cover in getting them up to the standards that we have with the Common Core and K-Prep assessments. And so that's good news for us and for our schools and for our whole community.
Yeah, so if they have a good foundation, it's easier to educate them
Absolutely.
further.
Absolutely.
Now, is there something that parents should be doing to get these kids ready, or is it the preschool programs?
It's that data, the 65% readiness, comes from all of the sources that we have. So when we administer those tests in our schools at the beginning of the year, what we ask is, where has the student been? Have they been at home with parents? Have they been in child care, in home child care, or in a child care business? Have they been in preschool? So we look across all of those sources, and really what we'd like to do is begin to work. Obviously, we take this into account at our Early Learning Center. Our Early Learning Center students came in with about 55% readiness, so we're pleased with that. But we also would like to begin to have some conversations with others in the community, parents as well as those other child care providers, to say, here are the things that we look at, here are the things that we know students need to be aware of and be able to do when they get to us. And if we can start some conversations like that, then we can help the whole community with that.
Yeah, get more kindergarten ready.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Now, also, since the last time we spoke, there's been a budget proposal by the governor. And of course, that doesn't mean that's exactly what it's going to be, but it's his framework for what he's looking at. How was education impacted there, and how particularly would Nelson County kind of see that come out? Sure,
it's really clear to see that the governor's emphasis is on education, and so we really appreciate that in the K-12 process. Just a couple of the highlights from that: $189 million requested for SEEK funding, and that's the per pupil money that we get from the state. And that takes us back to the kind of funding that was coming to us from the state back at the beginning of the recession. And so that's exciting. We're glad to see that. It's not a cure-all, but we really appreciate the efforts of the governor and others to get that moving forward, and really are hopeful that the legislators will be able to move forward with that without having to change it too much. It's accompanied by pay raises for teachers. It calls for 2% pay raises in the 14-15 school year and 1% pay raises in the 15-16 school year. For Nelson County locally, still good news. Obviously, to have increased funding coming from the state and better pay for teachers is something that we can all get behind. The thing that causes a little bit of concern, and that we'll have to have budget discussions in our district about, is that if both of those things go through, then the cost of the pay raises won't be met by that SEEK funding increase. So our local district and to an extent our local taxpayers will have to make that difference up.
Okay, so we'll have to wait and see what happens there.
That's
now,
right.
You're saying that the funding's going back to prior to the recession time. Have you noticed, has it been an effect, the money have an effect on the students during that period of time?
Yeah, I think any of us would say we've definitely felt the pinch. And what we've tried to do is really keep that from being felt by students and families as much as possible. And so what you see happen is a number of different things in districts throughout the Commonwealth. We've gotten a lot more efficient. Here in Nelson County, we've really trimmed a lot of our non-classroom staff significantly. We've actually, just in Nelson County alone, cut several $1 million over the last 3 to 4 years out of our staffing and it's all been non-teaching staffing where we've made those cuts. And that's a good example of how we try to keep students from feeling the pinch. I would say one area where students and families do feel the pinch is we've not had textbook money for a long time. That's actually been a part of the budget from the governor's office to try to reinstate some of that textbook funding. Here in Nelson County, what we talk about doing if that money comes through is not buying probably very many of the traditional paper-bound textbooks, but really investing further in technology and access to technology for our students so that they can have resources and access to content, whether they're at school or at home. So we'll be thinking about how to leverage that.
Okay, great. Now, recently we had the Bardstown-Nelson County Chamber of Commerce banquet on Friday, and I know that you're a member of the board there.
Yes.
But we missed out on seeing your box as part of the Chinese Dragon. We had that going during the banquet here on Central Kentucky Television. Did you make one?
I did make one, and actually we kind of took a shortcut. It worked out really nicely. My box was decorated. I don't even know where it is. I actually had to leave the dinner. I got rather sick, but we had decorated it with pictures from my Twitter feed.
Okay.
So that over the course of the last several months, usually 2 or 3 times a week, I try to take a picture of what's going on in our schools and things I'm proud of for Nelson County. So we had pictures of students and awards that students had won and data and how we're working with data. So we had a good mix of the things that we are about in schools on my box, and I didn't get to wear it, so I'm sure somebody at the chamber still has it and has loaded it with things that it should be filled with.
Well, one day maybe we'll get you with your picture with your box on.
Yeah,
you and Diane Cagney.
Maybe
she wasn't
so.
there either. So, well, thank you very much. And again, I've been talking with Anthony Orr, who is the superintendent for the Nelson County School District. This is the Ask the Superintendent segment, and you can just email us at info@channel6tv.com if you have some questions you'd like us to pass along for next month. This is Gary White for Central Kentucky Television.